Hamish Campbell here for Vision on TV, and we've got Paul Lewis, who's a bit of a Twitterati. Paul, why is Twitter so important?
That's a very broad question. In terms of journalism, which is what I do, in many ways it's quite transformative. I mean, it enables you to give really fast dispatches from the ground, albeit 140 characters, but faster than any other media that we've known before. And journalism has often been about doing things quickly and being the first on the scene and the first to report. So that's one thing. But the other thing I think is really interesting is the kind of two-way conversational aspect of Twitter, which enables other people who are following you or who are engaging in what you're doing to influence the way you report. So you can have whole collaborative endeavours which are journalistic and all hinge around Twitter.
But I'm curious about why Twitter, because there's been lots of technologies before this, and why is Twitter important?
Well, I think there's a strong argument to be made that actually Twitter is different to lots of the other technologies that existed before. I mean, the pattern of travel of information through the Twitter sphere is different to email and other forms of internet. I mean, the way in which you and I, if we've never met before, might be able to make a connection through a hashtag. Or, I mean, often the way we found it quite useful is locating witnesses to events that might have been newsworthy in some way. And these witnesses, when we found them, have been hundreds, if not thousands of miles away, and there's no other way in which we would have located them other than a technology which was horizontal to enable that connection.
So I think the key word there is probably horizontal, because hashtags weren't invented by Twitter, they were actually invented by users, and Twitter then implemented them into their system.
Yeah.
But, so why didn't some other technology succeed? Why did Twitter succeed?
Well, I mean, it's a very good question, but I don't think there's another technology which does what, up until when Twitter was created and became popular, does what Twitter does, which is, I mean, it is horizontal in as much as anybody can contact anybody and anybody can read anybody's tweets. But also, I mean, the network effect is absolutely essential to all of this. So, I mean, tiny little snowflakes can become snowballs within seconds. So if somebody's at the scene of something and uses Twitter as the mechanism through which they broadcast it to the world, it can, within minutes, and certainly hours, but often minutes, reach hundreds, thousands, millions of people. And there isn't another technology in which an individual who doesn't belong to a news organisation could do that in the same way.
So a very similar technology is Facebook. Why is not Facebook the equivalent of Twitter?
Well, because Facebook is closed for most people. There are very few people who have kind of open, silly enough to have open Facebook accounts. Twitter, on the other hand, is completely open, with the exception of DM messages, but it's open, so it enables that kind of viral effect to take place much more effectively than something like Facebook, where you can only really convey your information to the limited number of friends that you have.
But Twitter is owned by a single corporation, and that corporation has to make money. Twitter doesn't really have a business model currently. We know that when these open networks monetize, they tend to close down and be restricted. Is there anything to replace Twitter if it ceases to function as a journalistic tool?
Well, I think if it ceases to function, something will replace it that does something very similar. I don't think it will cease to function. I hope it won't. I mean, I take what you say about companies when they need to make money. My experience of Twitter as a company is actually, unlike some of the other big companies that work on the internet, it's actually quite good. I mean, they've described themselves as the kind of free speech wing of the free speech party. That might be a slight exaggeration, but I do think they recognise that the value in what they do is inherent in this notion of open information, and that's something they seek to preserve and advance in a way that other companies don't. So I think, so long as they maintain that kind of philosophical core, they'll continue to succeed.
So The Guardian, as an interesting news organisation, historically they've always built all tools internally, and they've used internal tools, and if something's missing they've built it themselves. But here we have them using a tool which is controlled by somebody else completely, and I don't think there's actually been a process to establish The Guardian using that tool. I think you just started using it. Has this caused discussions and eruptions within The Guardian?
Well, I mean, I don't think eruption. I mean, this is nothing unique to The Guardian. I mean, we have been an early adopter, and I think in many ways we've pioneered the technology. But that's as much to do with the fact the Guardian is actually quite willing often to experiment. I think we're quite a progressive, leaning organisation, often in comparison to other news organisations which are slower to catch up. So I think in Twitter we saw something which was fascinating. I mean, anyone who works in journalism basically works in kind of the world of conveying and trading information. That's what it is. Whoever you are and whoever you do, whoever's doing it. So Twitter enables a different method for communicating. And so obviously at The Guardian we found it fascinating, and I think there were few key landmark moments, if you look at the last 2 or 3 years, where we've had real gains in using it. I mean, let's be honest, it doesn't bring in vast amounts of traffic to the news organisation, or to any news organisation, but where I think we are finding it's really valuable is in the way we interact with our users. And more and more at The Guardian, we are seeing that as a kind of a way forward, that we want to re-establish a different kind of relationship with the people who previously consumed the news, and we want them to be partly involved in helping produce it as well. And I think Twitter is one of the ways in which that can happen.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, it's Hamish Campbell. Should we be relying so much on a single American corporation, especially if we know the history of American corporations? But Twitter works really well at the moment. Find out more, visionontv.